So, Donald Trump has now officially been sworn in as the 47th president. And what happens the next 4 years remains to be seen, and that's also not an exclusive question for him or his party. Another part of that goes to what exactly are Democrats going to do from now to both the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential election? It's pretty obvious to note that Democrats are just not in a good place right now. This is definitely their worst election in quite a while. Losing the presidency was a clear blow, but they also lost a popular vote for the first time since 2004, which was something considered all but impossible in the Trump era. And they lost the Senate, and despite expectations they would flip the House, they ended up coming short there as well. If you're a Democrat, you're rightfully demoralized. 2016 was considered an anomaly by many, as Trump narrowly beat Hillary Clinton, who still won the popular vote. And Trump himself was never really that favorable. There was so much energy from the get go from Democrats once Trump won to resist him. And it felt like it paid off in 2020 when he lost in another narrow election. But all of that was for 4 years later to lose to him again, and this time without any asterisks that they could really point to give themselves hope. Again, he won the popular vote this time, and early polls indicate that unlike when he started in 2017, he's actually going to have an approval rating that's above water, which is like still not great historically speaking, but he's most likely going to start off above 50%, so that's definitely for Donald Trump that is nirvana. So there's a lot of clear gray areas for Democrats to manage going forward, and it's not clear that this is going to be an easy ocean to navigate. For one, Democrats do not have a clear leader. When Trump won, there were always key individuals to point to for countering him. Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the party at the congressional level, was a key piece of managing said hashtag resistance to Trump. It's because of her, after all, that Trump was impeached both times, even if he would eventually be acquitted both times. And on the presidential level for 2020, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden, who of course became the nominee and then president, always seemed like the next logical step. Even from 2020 to 2024, Biden being the president really kept Democrats together. I mean, you have the president, that's your leader. You are one intact, you know who represents what. And of course, Pelosi as the House Speaker for the first 2 years reinforced that agenda, even if it didn't exactly go through how they would have wanted. This time, well, Democrats, they don't really have much. Hakeem Jeffries is the new Democrat House Minority Leader, but it's pretty clear he doesn't come across as like a big leader, and we haven't even heard that much like from him. And presidential wise for 2028, it's going to be the most wide open primary they've had this century, probably. You know, Democrats literally have no one to imagine putting up. And yes, some polls show Kamala Harris again as the front runner in the 2028 primary, but it's still fresh off the election, and I gotta be honest, I kind of doubt this. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I do think she does want to run for president again one day, but 2028, I really doubt this. So there's really just no one there, and outside of that, who else could even take up the mantle in second place, or who would be the definite what other candidates would there be to create attention in the party in that primary? There's always a competition. Even after 2004, the last clearly big loss for Democrats, Hillary Clinton was always seen as a likely next step, even if Obama ended up besting her. Well, there's no clear logical step forward, and there's not really an Obama to consider coming from behind and making it competitive and interesting. You know, there is a lot for the party to grasp, and again, I think having a clear leader is it's not something that is going to come very soon. In fact, of course, we're 4 years out from the primary, so that's something that's going to take a while. But a clear leader would be a great starting point for the party that they can manage to get behind and manage to have the party be relatively enthusiastic about, just enough for them to win an election, of course. And another thing about enthusiasm is, so in 2028, it will be our first election without Donald Trump. To some of you, that sounds great. To some of you, that may sound sad. Depends on what your opinion on him is. Um, and that could be bad for Republican enthusiasm, but there's a flip side to that. That could also be bad for Democrat enthusiasm as well. Since Donald Trump emerged in 2016, the there has been no clearer key go-to message for Democrats than Donald Trump is bad and he needs to be defeated. If you're a Democrat, that probably excited you. You hate Trump, but will the next Republican really get you as, it like passionate against? Negative partisanship is it's easy these days, but it's also, you really have to hate the guy. If it's JD Vance who is the VP and ideally the next logical step, sure, there's a lot of controversial stuff about him. He definitely has a lot of red flags, but would I say he would generate the kind of negative partisanship Trump did? I really just don't know it. And so I do feel, generally speaking, 2028, the turnout is going to be lower in general because both parties just don't have an enthusiasm at this moment. And that could end up being bad for Democrats as well because, again, no enthusiasm for them could just result in voters choosing Republicans again, or maybe they narrowly win again. Again, 4 years, a lot of time. But furthermore, another thing Democrats are going to think for 4 years while Trump is in office is okay, well, he's going to mess up, and people hating him over time, his approval rating is going to drop, and that will make people want to vote Democrat. The thing is, first off, you can't rely on Donald Trump messing up to save you. You can't rely on a president messing up to save you. This is not a common thing. Donald Trump and Joe Biden both will have you believe, because they both lost, well, their parties lost because Biden dropped out, that after one term, voters get tired of the party and they switch. That's actually not really true. In fact, it's been very common for a long time. A president gets reelected and then the party loses. One term is usually not bad enough for the president to go down. Um, so just assuming one term of Trump is going to motivate people to vote Democrat, that's just not a safe bet. Democrats just should not rely on that. And also, Donald Trump's approval rating as a whole, it's going to be very hard for me to imagine his approval rating is going to ever be under 35% because he has a very passionate following that will probably always amount to a bottoming out of 35. And even getting into 35, that Biden couldn't do that at his worst. Trump probably is, unless he really messes up, and that's definitely possible. I just don't see that being a thing you should rely on if you're Democrats. But really, the final issue I have, like the final issue that Democrats need to focus on, and this is something that they really, really don't want to think about because this is not something they've shown to be good at, is what do they believe in other than Republicans are bad? That's not a winning message two-thirds of the time if you just go off the last three elections. What policies do Democrats believe in? What are their stances on things at this point? What is going to happen if they take office? And why should voters come out for them? This was something that Kamala Harris struggled with, and we saw how that went. This is something Joe Biden struggled with, but it wasn't obvious because Donald Trump in 2020, he wasn't on his best behavior, so voters overlooked that barely. So figuring out what they believe in is a huge part of getting people excited because you know what you're getting if they win. So it really helps you to be excited. And I mean, what's the point of voting for politicians if not there is something that's going to happen to better my life? So these are all the things Democrats are going to have to work on if they forget 2026 and 2028. If they want to rebuild and come out of this election in a stronger environment and just in a more unified way, they're going to have to think of all these things, and it's not easy to imagine them doing it. But this is politics. It's not impossible. We're going to have to see what Democrats think. We're going to have to also see what Republicans think post Trump. Interesting times, years far off in the future. This video could age poorly, but this is where things stand right now. Hopefully, you guys have a great day.